That is loud.
Okay.
That's definitely loud. All right. How's everybody doing today? Good. Thank you guys for coming. So we're going to have a conversation here today about guest expectations and being able to match them and meet them. Restaurant business, not really news to anybody. Has been hit pretty hard for the last 2 years. A lot of changes. Guest expectations have changed. The way we interact with our guests, the way we interact with restaurants, what they want from us is not what it used to be. I think restaurants are having a pretty massive evolution. You can tell by the show here, it's like incredibly tech-oriented. Everybody's reevaluating how they manage their guest journey, how to get guests what they want. And I think we're here today to sort of talk about what do expectations look like, what changes have happened, and what a restaurant can do to basically match guest expectations. Does that sound good? You guys look surprised. Like, oh, I thought we were going to talk about our favorite nacho toppings. Oh, I'm a queso guy.
I like jalapenos myself.
Spicy or not spicy?
Ooh, this is a tough one. Carnitas, maybe? Is it fake protein?
No fake protein. Not this guy. Full carnivore. Full carnivore. Not even an herbivore, just full carnivore. Oh, my doctor says protein is
vegetables. Exclusively. Yeah, I like that.
No, that's what food eats. That's not what people eat. All right, that being said, all right. Good times. What do you guys think is like the most significant change that's happened for the business in the last year, 2 years?
I mean, I can tell you the most significant change in my world, and many restaurateurs hate it, QRs went from a totally unacceptable technology are pretty much here to stay. I think whether anybody wants to acknowledge that or not. They were, by the way, outside the U.S., they were already dominant. But the U.S. just couldn't get their head around it, and COVID just drove it. Yeah, we were using GoTab 5 years ago in my restaurant in D.C., and you're right, guests didn't really know what a QR code was, right? We had to teach them, this is how a QR code works. And obviously GoTab, we had this big space, 8,500 square feet, really, really busy happy hour. And so we needed GoTab because we wanted people to order at the table, right? Without hiring an army of servers to be able to do that. For 4 hours.
For 4 hours, yeah. So we had this surge because we were right by a lot of offices. So they had this really, really, really busy happy hour for 4 hours. So we were actually the first full-service restaurant, I think, to use GoTab.
Definitely one of them, yeah.
And QR code ordering was a challenge to educate the guests. But today, obviously, everyone knows what a QR code is.
Well, the funny thing is today, I get complaints. People come to me and they say, I went to this restaurant and had a QR on the table and it didn't do anything. They're like, I sit here, I can't get a server, I got a menu, but I can't actually do anything with the damn menu. And I think the expectation's actually been set the other way now. If people have experienced it, which is, hey, I have control of my destiny, and I didn't used to, or I go to places where I don't control my destiny, and it's very frustrating. So I do, obviously it's not copacetic in all settings, but nonetheless, it is a frustration.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'd say the biggest change, obviously, is adoption of technology and the customer expectation for, why do I have to wait to get a bill, right? Why can't I just pay? Why can't I pay and leave, right? Or why can't I order? And it's really busy and I have to try to flag someone on to order, right? And there's technology that solves this. Restaurant, why aren't you using that technology to give me a better experience?
What drives me crazy is, yes, we have QR code adoption, but I hate it when I bang it and it takes me to a PDF.
That's exactly what I was talking about. It's even worse than no QR.
Doing the scroll and the pinch and I can't do anything. It's like, okay, great. So I don't have to touch your menu, but I got nothing here.
If you're going to do a QR code menu, you have to be able to order, right? So, otherwise, give me a paper menu.
I have to throw in my Zoolander line. Is this a menu for ants? I mean,
let's zoom in and not on the ant thing, but on the QR code for a second.
I haven't gotten to use that one. I wanted to use it.
Should be recording this. I feel like there's this quotient of restaurants that were like, okay, we're going to do the QR code thing for the pandemic, but we don't want this anymore. We're gone. Our guests don't want it. At my restaurant, we are 99% digital ordering. So we don't even have a register. You can't walk in with your card and your phone. You can't. we get zero complaints. Like nobody has been upset about it at all. They're happy to just order their hamburger. Like, are you guys seeing stuff like that out there where there's like a reversal or?
I can tell you my customers of GoTab, and I can also tell you my wife owns and runs 2 restaurants that have 2 different demographics in 2 separate cities. One of them, there is a point of frustration that is age correlated. They want it to be the old way. But there's also, as you might imagine, there's not just that group of people at that restaurant. There's other people who absolutely love it and prefer it. And so it's a mix, right? You get inevitably 1 in 20 person who says, I don't want any of this. And then you'll get 15 people who say this is better. And so there's always the challenge of like knowing your customer. Sorry, not loud enough. There's always the challenge of knowing your customer, knowing what they care about. The other restaurant is probably more the demographic that you serve. Nobody has any expectation of service. They, in fact, want the food to come quickly. That's what they consider to be service. Food coming quickly, always available, no missteps or misorders. That's what they do.
Yeah, I think it totally depends on the type of restaurant, right? If we work with Michael Mina or Danny Meyer and his high-end restaurants, they don't want QR code ordering or being ordered that way. But I think what's nice, I think GoTab actually has evolved through the pandemic to allow full service, high-end, fine dining, all the features that they want. Plus, maybe you can pay your bill, right? Rather than waiting for the server, that kind of thing, right? So there's ways, I think the particular implementation is going to depend on the restaurant, the brand of the restaurant.
I was actually just talking to a full service a software company that's associated with fine dining. And in that scenario, we've actually heard repeatedly that guests do want to buy a second glass of wine and pay with technology in some scenarios. Right? It's great when the server is always available, but inevitably they're not. And no one really feels compromised in that process.
Absolutely. Because the worst thing is sitting there without a glass of wine waiting for your server to come. Right?
I can't tell you how many times I've been at like a steakhouse or a fine dining restaurant and I'm like, my glass is empty. And like, I really just want one more drink where it's like, give it to me now. You know what I mean? But I think that is like what has changed about guest expectations. It's like, it's easy for a restaurant to go, oh, no, we want the service model. We have this thing. But you know what? Every single person on the universe has Amazon on their phone. Every single person has Uber. Every single person has Target. Like, we know how to use our phone. And we want things right now, And so I think you can have both. Like, I don't care if you're the highest end restaurant. Like, if it makes the guest journey easier, right? What can you do to enable that?
Agreed.
That was a conversation ender right there. Like, yes, totally.
Sorry. I mean, there's not really anything to argue with. I would summarize it as restaurants, and this is more provocative, I suppose. Sometimes restaurants think that they are more important than the guests. And sometimes chefs or owners are like, well, I want to make what I want, which a couple of chefs can do, but the majority of restaurants and chefs need to listen to their guests. And if the guest wants it, you give it to them.
We are on the B2B side, right? Do you think it's easy for us to say that and have that opinion, and yet there isn't the adoption?
I think so. inKind, we've funded 750 restaurants, so we work with a lot of different operators, from the independent single unit, I want to just make what I want to make, to the bigger brands. And I think the most successful operators are the ones that produce what the customer wants. Like ultimately, wine. I love wine. The wine that I serve at my restaurant.
We doing the show of hands. Who else likes wine? Good.
But it may not
100% buy-in.
It may not be the same wine that other people like to drink, right? But I don't just exclusively have weird Greek wines on my list, right? Like, I have to have wines that people want. And, I think that's what the best restaurant operators understand, is how do you give the guests what they want in the fastest, most efficient way, in a way that they like,
What do you guys think is like the lowest hanging fruit for restaurants to improve like efficiency or the guest experience?
To me, I think it depends on the particular restaurant type. Like, there's so many restaurants. We have a client, actually, who they have big venues, and you go watch a show, and they serve food, and
I know who this
you know,
is.
and they have a lot of locations, and you're sitting there during the show, and you have to flag down the server or leave and go to the bar and get a drink. And I was like, guys, you need to use GoTab, right? Like, this is a clear win for everyone. You're going to serve 2 or 3 times as many drinks in the night, right? Make a lot more money. And the customer doesn't have to do anything. They can order, right? So I really think that particular efficiency is like low-hanging fruit for them, right?
Yeah, and I agree. I think in some cases there's obvious 2x wins because that would be 2 to 3x sales increase. I do think there are cases where if everything's staffed properly and everything's working great, there isn't any low-hanging fruit. I think Michael Mino probably has some places that are fully staffed, fully set up, and there's really not a ton of room for improvement in that setting.
I would say that there's probably several. My vote would probably be communication, right?
Oh, I would definitely agree with that in a not Michael Mino setting.
My family and I, we all had COVID a couple weeks ago. We're all tired. We're all sick. We're all super busy. And I said, you know what? Let me just order breakfast today. Like, we'll get delivery. Nobody has to cook. Get everybody ready. So we order from our favorite, and it's a national chain, to bring us, pancakes and biscuits and gravy, whatever. So I go to the brand's website. I order. It's 35 minutes. Okay, cool. Get the kid washed up. Get my wife back in bed. Whatever. I get a notification that says your food will be delivered in like 5 minutes. Or great. So I go to my front door. I don't see the car. Stand there 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. No car. Another 2-3 minutes. I'm like, where's my delivery? So I call the restaurant, right? Again, national chain. They're like, hey, restaurant answers the call.
And they call DoorDash.
Right? And they said, well, we don't deliver your food, so you need to call DoorDash. And I was like, no, I ordered from you. This is a you problem, not a me problem. And then I get a notification that says the food was delivered. I don't have any food in my hand. There's nothing. So I call the restaurant, and they're like, oh, nobody ever picked it up. So something failed in the technology where the driver said, oh, yeah, I guess the driver got paid, never picked up. So I was like, well, just send it to me. And they're like, we don't have drivers. So now I'm angry because I did this to save time and frustration. Anyway, long story short, I drive to the restaurant to pick up the food. I'm on the phone with DoorDash for an hour trying to get somebody on the phone, and they're like, we can only refund the delivery.
I'm going to send you some frozen breakfast sandwiches for next time.
And anyway, not to go deeper into the pain, the situation exacerbated. So I try to call the restaurant. The store's like, no, you got to call corporate. So I've called DoorDash. I've called the store. There's no phone number to call corporate. You have to fill out a form on their website. I don't know where it goes. I don't get a response. I tweeted that. Anyway, for me to be refunded $37 for some pancakes, when it took 2.5 hours of my time, I finally didn't get an email until 3 days later. It was like, how as a national brand can you make it this hard to call you?
I agree with you, and I can tell you one of our clients, a nicer restaurant group, uses us exclusively for the two-way SMS messaging. Barcelona Wine Bar uses GoTab because you can text message back and forth. Turns out things go wrong. People get the wrong stuff. You don't show up at the curb. Things happen. And guess what everybody has? They have phones with SMS. You don't have to install some stupid app. You don't have to do anything except for order your food with a phone number that you can text message. And that's the whole reason they do it, because they're service focused. And it turns out being able to talk to your customer is really important when they're off premise.
Especially when they're hangry.
Right.
We ordered to save time in our day, and I lost time because of it. And I never got an apology. Nobody ever called me and was like, dude, I'm so sorry this happened. And I even blasted the brand on LinkedIn, so I'm a little bit of a jerk at that point. But
Clearly.
it was like, come on. How do you, we have the technology, right? It's not like a restaurant can't figure out how to not communicate with their guests. All around this room, it's here,
I mean, you actually don't. Most restaurants don't have two-way messaging with their guests. It's not easy. And then you get into problems around privacy with phone numbers. Like if you're calling on your personal phone, Now they have the number of your staff, right? Is that good, safe, healthy? You can call from the main number, but then what happens when you call back? Like, who do you get? Do they know what's going on? Chances are they don't even pick up. So one of the things we think is that SMS is actually the best way to communicate, and you should be able to track every person over that. So when we take an order, we always take a phone number. And that phone number means we can always get back to that guest if something goes wrong. And of course, most restaurants, I find it funny, most restaurants tend to think that they don't think about what goes wrong. They always think about how it works normally. But the problem is those 2% or 1% of situations where one thing goes wrong are the ones you end up spending 50% of your day, and all the pain and heartache and pissed off customers come from that 1%. Sorry.
Yeah. I think
Touching some deep nerves here.
I think the challenge for a restaurant though is there's so much technology that they have to, and they don't necessarily integrate together. They don't talk to each other. It's absolutely, and so it's hard when one of our restaurateurs yesterday was telling me he asked his head of IT to put together a list of all of the technology they pay for on a monthly basis, right? And it was like 2 pages long, right? It's a ton of technology, and most operators don't have a head of IT, so then trying to figure out how to integrate all these things together to work well together is a challenge. And then when something goes wrong, like they have no way to respond, which pisses off the guest, right? So I think for operators, the challenge of COVID is the amazing thing is all this technology that we're seeing around us. It's hard for them to figure out how to get it to all work together, right? And so I think you need seamless solutions that work together, right? And that's why GoTab and inKind are partnered, right? Like it's a perfect guest experience. If you have a house account, you can order through GoTab, right? Tip is transacted for properly, delivery, everything works.
And that's a super common problem. You actually get gift cards that only work at the point of sale, but don't work for online. I don't understand how that's acceptable. Like, oh, well, sorry, we can't do that. That's an in-store gift card only. Did you know you bought an in-store only card?
It certainly didn't say that when I bought it. We at my restaurant, because we have different online ordering and different POS, we can't do that.
That's my point.
Yeah, so we literally have to say, oh, that is only available when you order online.
The customer doesn't understand that. Like, what?
Especially when they give it to their grandson or whatever, right? And they're like, oh, I bought you a gift card. Which way do you buy online or, you know?
Because there are so many options, because things have changed, how would you advise to a brand or an operator to think about making a tech decision? Like, how do they prioritize that? How do they select a partner? Like, what do you think is the best way for them to think about that?
I can tell you how we always win, because I don't know what the best way for them to go about it. I do think one of the problems with a lot of operators is they do a very thin look at the products. They don't think about, well, what happens when things go wrong? How do I manage those situations? So they're just like, does it check this box? Does it do email? Check. Does it do gift cards? Check. And the nuances are important. But I can tell you, we always win as a product when we get to do an in-depth demo. It's because we know that if we go deep and show as much as we can show, that's when people go, oh shit. Oh yeah, oh man. Yeah, that does happen to us. But it takes time. It takes time more than just saying, oh, this is the best known product. That's if we don't get that opportunity to pitch it to them, then obviously there's brands everywhere with tons of money, and they can spend a lot on advertising.
Yeah, and I think certain products work really well for a certain size restaurant, and as they grow, I think restaurants are having to reevaluate the software that they're using on a regular basis. And so if I have a 1-unit fast casual, maybe I use something, versus if I have a 5-unit or a 10-unit fast casual. So I think sort of the problem is a lot of times operators look at, oh, I'm opening a unit, what is the 10-unit guy doing, right? And they count, oh, like, this is what is used by every big, major chain across the country. And that's probably not the right solution for the individual, right?
Go ahead.
I was going to add one other thing is that I find it amazing how many operators don't even know what their service model is. And in our case, we always talk about, like, what's the service model? Is it counter service? Is it full service? Is it some mix? Is it a large space? Is it a small space? All those things are really fundamental, but the operators themselves, we don't have the language I think there's not a standardized language in restaurants that people say, oh, we're a counter, we're this, and this, which frankly helps both the vendors and the customers be smarter about what they should be buying.
I think we've entered an era where the technology stack is wrong, right? Right now, the technology stack is centered around the point of sale system, right? Which makes sense because for a long time, you walk into a store, you pay money for something, right? So we had to figure out how to enable a transaction through technology, right? But now, because guests are on that all the time, whether it's communication, whether it's ordering, whether it's feedback, whatever, like this is the center of the tech stack, right? The guests and their phone. And it doesn't matter what your service model is, because even if you're a really high-end restaurant and you want to do table service and you have the maitre d' in the tuxedo, blah, 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 I had to make a reservation online, right? Or I pre-bought a gift card, or I had to get directions there, or I wanted to look at your, it's like every single piece of the journey is on that, other than eating the food. So I think restaurants have to think about what is the center of my tech stack. And I think it's really about communication, right? How do I enable the guest's ability to do the thing they want to do with me?
I would say it's that, and it's setting expectations. I find it funny, again, if you look on these, on a menu, one of the things we do is we tell the guest how long things are going to take. Turns out, we always ask the questions, what would a server do? Server would walk out and you'd say, hey, I'm in a rush for lunch. What should I order? They'd say, oh, don't order the pizza. We're 25 minutes behind on pizza. You can order a burger. Burger we can have done in 5 minutes. But how many menus that you look at on your phone are going to tell you, 25 minutes for a pizza and 5 minutes for a burger, real time, based on what the kitchen looks like. And I think part of communication is setting expectations, because that is really the biggest part of communication, is anticipating what it is they're going to ask. What are they going to ask? Like, how long is it going to take? That's a pretty common question. How many digital menus tell you how long things take? It's not a trick question.
No, you usually get like the full order. Like, doesn't matter what you order, 60 minutes.
Yeah, I find that funny too.
I think the shift is from point of sale to really like CRM, and that's where restaurants do a good job of understanding their guests, being able to communicate with their guests, bring them back, repeat frequency, right? Now are things that you can focus on because you have understanding of what the guest is ordering and you understand how to get them to come back in a personalized way, which was really never done before, right? Before, you didn't know who your guests were, really, and you didn't know what they were ordering, and you didn't have a way to communicate with them. And now the digital sort of shift through COVID is that you can communicate and understand your particular guests.
Only if they use their phone in venue.
Yes.
I find it ironic that most restaurants who do the majority of the revenue in venue know the people in their venue less than the people who order takeout.
Absolutely.
Because the people ordering takeout have cookies and identifiers for their device that tells you this is Johann. But if you're Johann ordering from a server, you're some dude. I don't know who you are. Right? You might be my best spender or my worst client. I don't know.
Yep. 100%. And that's the shift. The shift is how do you start to understand your customer better, and that becomes the focus of your tech stack, right? It's really that CRM system.
So as B2B suppliers for restaurants, now that we've had this conversation openly, how do you guys think about designing your products to help enable that for the restaurant? You've kind of gone into this a little bit, but
one thing we do is we try not to be everything to everybody. We try to focus on an area and do that really, really well. And we don't, humorously, for a long time, we didn't want to call ourselves a point of sale. We do now because the market insists that we call ourselves that. But we do call ourselves a commerce system because that's what we focus on, is commerce. We're not a CRM. We partner with a bunch of CRMs. We're not a gift card. We partner with a lot of gift cards. We basically think that restaurants are getting so sophisticated in technology, you're not going to go buy everything in one place. You're going to have to go out, whether they like it or not, they're going to have to buy a couple of different things. And then they need to think, what are those boxes that they fit in? I think a CRM, CDP marketing tool is kind of its own problem. It's not a commerce engine. It's not a kitchen operating system. those are different problems. And so we look at it and say, is this in our lane? Does this make sense? Can we do this really well? And if not, should we go partner for that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, inKind, we're great at funding restaurants and then partnering with the systems that the restaurant's using so that the guest has a seamless experience, right? So you buy a house account to a restaurant, you can make a priority reservation through 7 Rooms, who've integrated with. You go in, you order through GoTab, you can use your house account to pay for it, right? You close out your bill, like it all just works seamlessly for the customer. So you're right, restaurants are gonna have to use different people who are solving specific needs for them, but it's really, really, really important that those are integrated until a restaurant doesn't have to deal with like working with several systems.
And the consumer should know. The operator is going to have to know.
Anybody have any questions?
Hi. So you guys have kind of talked about how technology is important and useful in various restaurants that maybe are faster service. I don't want to say lower expectation, but not the higher end. How do you see technology being useful and actually implemented in higher end restaurants, and maybe for your brands or just generally? I know you're talking about the CRM thing on the phone, but I'd like to hear more about that.
I can tell you how we are already used in higher end restaurants, and we have some higher end restaurants that there's no freaking way they're going to put a QR on the table ever. They think that's sacrilege. I know based on what I see that some of their customers actually would like it, but that's not the ethos or atmosphere they want. I do see a scenario where you open a tab with a QR at the beginning of your dining experience. Sorry, with a text message. So there is no QR, there is no visual. It's purely a Johann, welcome back. Your bill is on your phone. Don't worry about it. You can walk out whenever your card's on file. That to me is a service. I see no place in the world where presenting a check is part of the experience. I know operators sometimes say that's part of the experience. I think that's bullshit. So
It's the worst part of the experience.
It's the unfun part of the experience.
And how many times have you gone to a high-end establishment where you get there and you're like, your table's not ready or your whole party's not there, but you're welcome to sit at the bar, and then you don't want to have to pay a bill and then pay a bill.
That's
right?
ludicrous. It drives me crazy.
I want to sit down at the bar, order my cocktail, and then go to my table, and I don't have to have multiple transactions and check presenters.
I mean, you're going for entertainment, right? You're not going there to do chores. Paying is a chore. Like tipping, all that stuff is a chore. Like I want the fun part. I want the greetings. I want the description. I want the food. I want the drink, and I want it whenever I want it. And I want to leave whenever I want to leave. And I just think that in a fine dining scenario, skipping payment or making payment disappear is what it should be. And we're looking at it with like hotels, where you open a tab across your entire day, and you may dine, you may have a drink at the pool, and you may buy a T-shirt in the shop. Like payment is the unfun part, and in our mind, it should disappear.
I'll go back to really being more customer centric and knowing more data about that customer. So even if you walk into a fine dining restaurant, it used to be a maitre d' hopefully recognized you and remembered who you were and remember what you liked. Nobody has the maitre d's anymore, right? So technology could do that, right? So why aren't you tagged in the reservation system as a VIP, or why aren't you tagged with he likes Barolo, and why aren't those things done? Technology solves that. The hard part is a restaurant needs a way to get that information about a particular person, so then you need to integrate with the ordering system, payment system in order to get there. So I think the high-end restaurant goer's experience is made much, much, much better by technology. It's just that the restaurant has to understand the full experience and integrate with all of those touch points in order to then provide that experience back to the
I also do think there are a ton of improvements to be made in the kitchen. And a lot of people don't talk about this because, especially in fine dining, the chefs are very sort of, they're geniuses, right? And because they're geniuses, they know how everything should be done. There is a lot of room for technical optimization that will just do it better than a person would. And so
You mean like robots, or what type of thing?
No. I'm actually talking like even kitchen displays. You walk into a finer dining restaurant and they often don't want to use kitchen displays because the chef wants control. But there are ways.
They want paper tickets.
They want paper tickets, and they want, paper tickets, but they also love to yell out when it's ready. Right? There's like this control thing of like, two steak frites or whatever. They love that control. Like it's a power center. I don't think that's the best model for efficiency, and I see it time and time again. You could do some really cool things around predictive and timing and wilt times and how quickly things die that a human can't do. And you should take advantage of the computing power in the kitchen, which is an efficiency gain. It may not be sexy, it may not change the experience, but it's a big gain. And we see numbers of like 30%, 30% efficiency gain in the kitchen, 50% on running, and that's just really the technology doing what it does, which is sorting and matching and optimizing.
I think the other one that drives me bonkers is when I'm sitting and having, whether I'm by myself or with friends or whatever, and the server or the bartender comes over and goes, "Hey, my shift is over. Can I close you out and start a new tab?" What? Like, you're interrupting my experience now. And like, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but really, like, that's not great for the guests. It's like, oh, sorry, I know we're having a great conversation, but I got to pay my tab because Tim's out of here. Like, what's that?
One other one, speaking of communication, here's another one that actually came from a fine dining restaurant, one of the highest volume fine dining restaurants in DC. You run a big venue. Staff, Johann's angry because he got the wrong bottle of wine, or maybe it tasted bad, right? So the staff member goes back and says, "Oh crap, I need to get a manager to go over and placate Johann." Well, and you're in a large footprint restaurant. How do you run that person down? Now you have to verbally tell them, "Hey, go deal with this guy, Johann. He's unhappy about his wine." Well, that's a ton of inefficiency on the floor. And there's a bunch of communication stuff. People will use the earbuds or other solutions like that. But you can also do flags and customer status on the dining room floor. And it's really just making information transparent to all the staff so they don't have to verbal everything and run around and chase each other down. It's, again, a huge time suck. And that is from a GM of a nice restaurant. That was her idea. I was like, hell yeah, I'm taking that. We're putting that in the product. Yeah.
So basically, your product innovation is going out to eat and finding out what you're angry about or what wasn't fun.
I actually haven't eaten there yet, so I hope to.
I think I'll take Tim's point about kitchen management back to customer centric. So really, at a high-end restaurant, the chef should be spending time on the floor, right? It should be spending time talking to customers. That's what you're there for, right? To meet the chef and eat his food or her food. And I think Tim's right. Like, the technology allows the chef to be more efficient, spend 30% less time in the kitchen so they can be on the floor with the diner, which ultimately is the experience that I was looking for.
That was clearly a good question. It's all fired up.
Yeah, there's probably more.
Anybody else have a question?
You see a lot of technology being adopted in other parts of the world very quickly, like in Australia or Europe, whether it's QR code ordering or whatever else it might be. But there seems to be a little bit more reluctance here in the US for some of that adoption to happen, even after a lot of the technology has proven that it works in the US during COVID. Are there fundamental things in the US that you think are limiting the adoption of technology more quickly? And it could be, obviously, we're a different labor market than Europe, for instance, and you need to find solutions to minimize that. But are there fundamental market things that you guys see from your customers?
I have a belief that humans are always the slowest part of technological adoption. It's not the technology itself, it's the humans. And I think we're just creatures of habit. And I think we already had a habit-based model. I was recently in Greece, and it was funny. All the service was freaking awful, by the way. Food was great, service was terrible. But every server took the orders on their phone, so they had a native app installed on their phone. This was their point of sale. And then they would walk over, which this is the terrible part. Then they'd get a payment terminal and drag that out to you to get you to pay. But it was just interesting that, in the US, imagine, I can tell you, not a single operator said, I want my staff to take the orders on their own personal phone. That just wouldn't fly here. But in Greece and every single restaurant I went to, that's exactly what happened. So I think there's just a cultural norm. that can't be changed or is just really, really slow to change. I don't know if I want my staff with their phones out either, though, to be fair.
Always give them €5 right up front.
Well, tipping, right? So tipping is the big difference. So
Right up front, man. 15 more at the end. There you go.
absolutely, and I think so. Well, the labor model here, right, is servers get a tip wage and then they get tips on top, and I think that changes a lot of dynamics in the restaurant. So things that work overseas don't necessarily work here because the servers are reliant on tips, right? And ultimately you get a better experience. That's why service increases.
I would debate that.
Well, remember at GoTab, the biggest complaint we got was from the servers thinking that they're going to make less money.
Yes, that's true.
Which wasn't true. Factually, you could show them. They're like, we already add the gratuity in the GoTab order as well.
They all made more, but they don't trust the numbers.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing.
I do think tipping changes it. I'm more referring to the fact that if you look at the metrics on tipping rarely correlates with performance. So if you
Never, it
like the
doesn't.
academic, it does over time. If you're in a job for a long time period, you will see some correlation. It actually tends to correlate with attractiveness more than anything, which is not super equitable, but it's a harsh world.
So don't hire me as your server, basically. I don't want to be served by the guy in the Hawaiian shirt. I get that. What if it's a tiki bar? Anybody else have a question? I know we've been up here for like 45 minutes.
I'm going to use a couple buzzwords with crypto and NFT. Obviously, it's still very, very early on in that space, but it's starting to impact the hospitality space a little bit. I'm curious how you guys see that impacting restaurants.
I actually sat on a panel about NFTs, and I was the old grumpy dude that said it's not relevant.
I'm also not super crypto forward, but I think that I think NFTs membership kind of things work really well, but really comes down to being able to like give somebody exclusivity or a better experience. And I think there was a place in New York that raised a bunch of money by selling NFTs.
But that doesn't make it a restaurant. That makes it an NFT sales place.
But the NFT gives you access to the restaurant, and then you can pay with.
We'll see how that
CRM
works.
or- You asked the wrong group this question.
I'm actually very bullish on Web3 for restaurants.
Tell us. Do tell us.
So I think that there's let's not call it a problem, but I think the traditional loyalty system for a restaurant, the like I earn points, is broken.
Agreed.
I don't think anybody chooses a restaurant because they have loyalty, but they're gonna get their points, right? I've chosen that restaurant because I'm hungry for that food, or I like that place, or it's close to my house, or whatever. I'm gonna get my points. That's not loyalty, right? It's the same thing. It's like, I don't care what airline I'm on. I just want the seat I want at the time I want to arrive at the place with the least amount of money, right? I'm not like every consumer. There's some people only fly.
I would actually say I do know that I've seen people who do change their behavior based on loyalty.
Me, 100%.
Yeah.
I play every game Starbucks sends me. Like, drink this Frappuccino, I'll buy it, I'll give it to someone else, like to get my points. Right? So,
But would you choose Starbucks because it has loyalty?
I choose Starbucks. I go to Starbucks frequently because of the rewards program that they have.
Right. So you damn sure get your points. That's what I'm saying. Where I think NFT changes the game for that is it allows the user to participate in revenue stream alongside of the restaurant. So like I can buy my NFT, I can sell it to you, I can sell it to you, I can sell it, you can then sell it. So like it allows the guest to participate in that, but also it allows for more of like not rewards, but like access. The people that are really active in loyalty are like in your top % of customers. They're not in the lower %. So if I'm going to go to a place all the time, I can skip the line, right? It allows that exchange to happen easily. Or maybe I can go to a VIP event, or I get early access to an LTO. And I think NFTs enable what I think loyalty should be about. It's about cool access.
I don't think you need NFTs to do that. I think you need customer segmentation and a CRM. Personally.
There are other ways to do it. NFT makes it kind of cool. Yeah, I'll
kind
give
of
you
cool and an asset, right? So you as a customer, maybe your NFT unlocks more things because you go in frequently, and then you can eventually sell that NFT. So you are, in a sense, like building value through your loyalty. But generally, I agree. I think like there's way simpler ways to solve this than creating an NFT.
And I think maybe not so much in America, but there's a lot of places in like South America where their financial system is really fucked up, because of the government. But crypto allows them to have like a free exchange in the way they handle their money. They don't have to be reliant on what the Brazilian government says how their operating system should work in terms of fiat, currency. And crypto allows. We don't have that problem here, right? But like, if I could pay with Ethereum, like, I'm not reliant on how the government says what my currency is worth. You know what I mean? It's like more of a free market.
Possibly.
Amen. We don't all have to agree.
Well, thank you very much. This has been great.
Thank you guys. Have a great day. Show's good.